The candlelight caught the edges of the chess pieces like captured stars, and Lady Eloise Hartwell studied the board with the same careful attention she brought to everything in her modest life. Around her, the drawing room of Thornfield Manor hummed with the low murmur of polite conversation, the rustle of silk gowns, and the occasional burst of masculine laughter from the card tables near the windows. "Your move, Miss Hartwell," Lord Ashford Blackwood said, his voice carrying that peculiar quality that made her think of velvet drawn across bare skin. He sat across from her with the stillness of a portrait, his pale hands resting lightly on the mahogany table between them. She had been attending Lady Pemberton's monthly gatherings for 3 years now, always grateful for the invitation, despite knowing she was included more from charity than genuine social standing. Her father's modest estate barely qualified them as gentry, and her wardrobe consisted of carefully maintained gowns from seasons past. Yet here she sat, playing chess with the most enigmatic nobleman in London society. A man whose arrival at any gathering caused a flutter of whispers and sidelong glances. "You seem distracted this evening," Lord Blackwood observed, and Eloise realized she had been staring at the board without truly seeing it. His eyes, an unusual shade of amber that seemed to catch the light strangely, studied her with an intensity that made her pulse quicken. "Forgive me, my lord. I was merely considering my strategy." "Were you?" A smile played at the corners of his mouth, neither mocking nor kind, but something in between. "I have found that the most interesting strategies often reveal themselves when we stop looking for them directly." She moved her knight, a cautious play that protected her position without advancing it. Lord Blackwood's response was immediate, his bishop sliding across the board with decisive grace. "Tell me, Miss Hartwell," he said, leaning back in his chair with that unnatural stillness she had noticed before. "What do you think of immortality?" The question caught her so off guard that she nearly knocked over her queen. Around them, the party continued its gentle rhythm, but she felt as though they had suddenly stepped into a private chamber where normal rules no longer applied. "I confess I have given it little thought, my lord. It seems rather beyond the scope of ordinary consideration." "Does it?" His fingers traced the edge of his wineglass, wine he had not, she noticed, actually consumed. "I find that the ordinary often contains the most extraordinary questions, if we have courage enough to ask them." Eloise studied him more carefully now. Lord Blackwood had appeared in London society some 5 years ago, with impeccable credentials and considerable wealth. Yet no one seemed to know much about his family or origins. He attended evening gatherings, but never daytime functions. His complexion held a pallor that suggested illness, yet he moved with a predator's fluid grace. And those eyes, she had never seen eyes quite that color on any living person. "Check," she said quietly, moving her rook into position. Lord Blackwood's expression shifted, genuine surprise flickering across his features. "Well played, Miss Hartwell. I had not anticipated that." "Perhaps you underestimated your opponent, my lord." "Perhaps I did." He studied the board with renewed interest, then made a move that seemed to open his defenses rather than shore them up. "Tell me, what would you say if I told you I have been playing chess for 300 years? The words hung between them like smoke. Eloise felt her breath catch, not from fear, but from a strange recognition, as though some part of her had been waiting for this revelation. "I would say," she replied carefully, moving her bishop, that you must have accumulated considerable skill in that time, and yet here we are evenly matched." His laugh was soft, almost surprised. "You do not call me mad? You do not flee? Should I?" She met his gaze directly, and something passed between them, a current of understanding that had nothing to do with words. "You have been nothing but courteous to me, Lord Blackwood. Whatever you are, I do not sense malice in you." "Whatever I am," he repeated, and his voice held a note of wonder. "You are remarkably perceptive, Miss Hartwell." "I am remarkably ordinary, my lord, but I have learned that the world contains more mysteries than society acknowledges." She moved her queen forward. "Checkmate." Lord Blackwood stared at the board, then at her, and for the first time since she had met him, she saw genuine emotion cross his features, not anger at losing, but something deeper. Respect, perhaps, or recognition. "Extraordinary," he murmured. "You have beaten me at a game I have played for centuries." "Then perhaps," Eloise said, her heart beating faster than the moment warranted, "you should honor your word and reveal your secret, my lord." The drawing room suddenly felt very quiet, though the party continued around them. Lord Blackwood rose from his chair with that inhuman grace, extending his hand to her. "Come with me to the terrace, Miss Hartwell. Some truths are better shared beneath the stars." She placed her hand in his, noting how cool his skin felt even through her glove, and allowed him to lead her through the French doors into the night garden. The autumn air carried the scent of dying roses and damp earth, and above them the sky stretched vast and star-scattered. "I am not what you think I am," Lord Blackwood began, then stopped, shaking his head. "No, that is not quite right. I am exactly what you think I am, if your thoughts have traveled down the path your eyes suggest." "You are not entirely human," Eloise said softly. It was not a question. "I have not been human for 347 years. He turned to face her fully, and in the moonlight, his features held an otherworldly beauty that made her chest tighten. "I was born in the reign of Charles II. I died in 1677, and I have walked this earth ever since, neither living nor dead, sustained by blood and cursed with eternity." The words should have frightened her. She should have screamed, fled, called for help. Instead, Eloise found herself stepping closer, studying his face with the same careful attention she had given the chessboard. "A vampire," she whispered. "The very word sounds like a curse, does it not?" His expression was bleak. "I have spent centuries trying to be more than the monster that word implies. I feed only on animals, or on those who offer their blood willingly and with full knowledge. I have used my wealth to help those in need, my influence to prevent injustices, and yet I remain what I am, a creature of darkness, forever separated from the warmth of a human connection." "Why tell me?" Eloise asked. "Why risk exposure?" "Because you saw me," Lord Blackwood said simply. "Not the title, not the wealth, not the carefully constructed facade. You saw past all of that to something true. And when you beat me at chess, when you outmaneuvered a mind that has studied strategy for 3 centuries, I realized that you are extraordinary, Miss Hartwell. Far more extraordinary than you know." A breeze stirred the garden, carrying with it the sound of music from the drawing room. Eloise felt as though she stood at a crossroads, one path leading back to her ordinary life of modest means and quiet spinsterhood, the other stretching into unknown territory filled with mystery and danger and possibility. "I am not frightened of you," she said, and realized it was true. "You should be." But his hand came up to cup her cheek with infinite gentleness, his cool palm against her warm skin. "I am a monster, Eloise. I have no heartbeat, no warmth, no future beyond endless nights. I should not have approached you. I should not have allowed myself to hope. Hope for what?" She interrupted, her own hand rising to cover his. "For this." His thumb brushed across her cheekbone. "For someone who might see past the monster to the man who still exists beneath. For someone whose courage and intelligence and kindness might make eternity bearable. For you." The confession hung between them, raw and honest. Eloise felt tears prick her eyes, not from sorrow, but from a sudden, overwhelming sense of recognition. This was why she had never married, why no suitor had ever stirred her heart. She had been waiting, though she had not known for what. "I am no one special," she whispered. "I am poor, plain, without prospects." "You are everything," Lord Blackwood said fiercely. "You are brilliant and brave and beautiful, and you beat me at chess, which no one has done in a century. You looked at a monster and saw a man. You are the most remarkable woman I have ever known, and I have known many across the span of centuries." "Ashford," she breathed, using his given name for the first time. "Say it again," he pleaded. "I have not heard my name spoken with such warmth in longer than I can remember." "Ashford." She stepped closer, close enough that she could see the faint lines around his eyes, the shadows that spoke of centuries of loneliness. "What happens now?" "Now?" He laughed, a sound edged with pain. "Now I do the honorable thing and walk away. I return you to your life, your chance at a normal future, with a mortal man who can give you children and grow old beside you. I disappear from London society and try to forget the woman who made me feel human again." "And if I do not wish you to walk away?" The question seemed to strike him like a physical blow. "Eloise, you do not understand what you would be choosing. A life in shadows, always moving before people notice we do not age. The knowledge that I am sustained by blood, even if not human blood. The weight of my past, the darkness I carry. You deserve so much more." "I deserve," Eloise said firmly, "to make my own choices. And I choose to know you better, Ashford Blackwood. I choose to understand what manner of man, of being you truly are. I choose not to run from something extraordinary simply because it is unfamiliar." "You are certain?" His voice was rough with emotion. "Once you step into my world, there is no returning to innocence." "I have never been innocent," she replied. "I have always seen too much, felt too deeply, understood too well that the world contains more than society admits. You are not a monster, Ashford. You are a man who has survived impossible circumstances with honor intact. That is not something to fear. That is something to admire." He pulled her closer then, his arms encircling her with a gentleness that belied his supernatural strength. She felt the coolness of his body through her gown, the absolute stillness where a heartbeat should have been, and none of it frightened her. Instead, she felt safe, cherished, seen in a way she had never experienced before. "I will court you properly," he said into her hair. "With your father's permission, with all the respect you deserve. I will not rush you will not pressure you. You must have time to truly understand what a future with me would mean. I would like that, Eloise agreed, though part of her wanted to protest that she already knew her heart. But wisdom suggested caution, and she had always been wise. They stood together in the moonlit garden for a long moment, neither speaking, simply existing in each other's presence. Finally, Ashford stepped back, though his hand lingered on hers. I should return you to the party before your absence is noted, he said, though I confess I would rather stay here with you until dawn forces me to retreat. There will be other nights, Eloise said softly. Yes. His smile transformed his face, making him look younger, more hopeful. There will be many other nights, if you will grant them to me. As they walked back toward the drawing room, Eloise felt as though she had stepped through a doorway into a new life. The party continued as before, but everything had changed. She had changed. She had looked at the impossible and chosen not to flinch, and in doing so, had found something she had not even known she was seeking. The following weeks unfolded like a dream, wrapped in shadows and starlight. True to his word, Ashford called upon her father, a kindly but distracted scholar who was too absorbed in his medieval manuscripts to question the pallor or peculiar hours of his daughter's suitor. He saw only that Lord Blackwood was wealthy, titled and respectful, and that Eloise bloomed in his presence like a rose finding unexpected sun. Their courtship took place in the margins of the day, late afternoon walks when the sun hung low and weak, evening concerts, moonlit rides through Hyde Park when the fashionable crowds had retired. Ashford showed her London through immortal eyes, pointing out buildings that had stood for centuries, sharing memories of streets that had changed beyond recognition. There was a bookshop here once, he said one evening as their carriage passed through Cheapside. The owner was a woman, which was rare in those days. She sold me a volume of poetry that I still have. She told me that words were the only immortal things, that they outlived flesh and stone and memory. I did not tell her I might outlive them all. Do you ever regret it? Eloise asked. The immortality. He was quiet for a long moment, his profile sharp against the carriage window. I regretted it for the first century. The isolation, the endless loss, watching everyone I cared for age and die while I remained unchanged. But I learned to find purpose in it. I could accumulate wealth and use it for good. I could learn languages, study sciences, preserve knowledge. I could help people across generations, even if I could never truly be one of them. Until now, she said softly. He turned to her, his amber eyes luminous in the dim carriage. Until now. You have given me something I thought lost forever, Eloise. Hope. The possibility of genuine connection. You make eternity seem less like a curse and more like a gift. She reached for his hand, lacing her fingers through his cool ones. Tell me about your transformation. If it does not pain you too much. I was 28, he began, his voice taking on the cadence of old memory. A minor nobleman with more debts than sense, fleeing creditors through the streets of London. I took shelter in what I thought was an abandoned church. It was not abandoned. The creature that found me there was ancient and mad with hunger. She attacked without mercy, drained me to the edge of death, and then, whether from whim or loneliness, she gave me her blood and transformed me. She? Eloise felt a pang of something that might have been jealousy. She was no romantic figure, Ashford said quickly. She was a monster in truth, taking pleasure in death and suffering. I fled from her the moment I understood what I had become. I taught myself control through sheer will and desperation. I refused to become what she was. You succeeded, Eloise said firmly. You are nothing like that. I have you to thank for reminding me. He raised her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her knuckles that sent warmth flooding through her. You see the man I have fought to remain. That is a precious gift. Their courtship deepened as autumn gave way to winter. Ashford introduced her to others of his kind, a small, careful community of vampires who had chosen similar paths of restraint and honor. There was Lady Marguerite, a French aristocrat who had survived the terror through supernatural means and now ran a charity hospital, Ordre. There was Dr. Thorne, who used his immortality to study medicine and treat diseases that baffled mortal physicians. There was young Thomas, barely 50 years transformed, who had been dying of consumption when an act of compassion had given him eternal life. We are not many, Lady Marguerite explained over tea in her elegant townhouse. Most of our kind are solitary or cruel or both. But some of us have found ways to make our curse into something bearable. We protect each other, help each other maintain our humanity. And you accept mortals among you? Eloise asked. We accept those who see us truly, Dr. Thorne replied. Those who understand what we are and choose not to fear or exploit us. You are rare, Miss Hartwell. Most humans would run screaming or attempt to destroy us. I cannot imagine destroying something so valuable, Eloise said. You have centuries of knowledge, experience, perspective. You could teach us so much, if only we were not too frightened to listen. The vampires exchanged glances, and Eloise saw something like wonder in their expressions. You see why Ashford is besotted? Lady Marguerite said with a smile. She is remarkable. As winter deepened, Ashford's courtship grew more intense. He brought her rare books from his personal library, volumes that dated back centuries. He taught her chess strategies that had been forgotten before her grandmother was born. He shared poetry he had written during long, lonely nights, verses that spoke of isolation and longing and the desperate hope for connection. I wrote this one in 1789, he said one evening, showing her a leather-bound journal. The French Revolution was beginning, and I was in Paris. I watched the world tear itself apart, and I felt so helpless. I could not stop the violence, could not prevent the suffering. All I could do was save individual lives here and there, and write about the futility of immortal impotence. Eloise read the verses, her heart aching at the pain they contained. You saved lives. That matters, Ashford. Every life you saved mattered infinitely to that person. I know that now, he said. But in the moment, it felt like drops of water against a raging fire. You have taught me to see my own actions differently, Eloise. Through your eyes, my life has meaning beyond mere survival. Your life has always had meaning, she insisted. You simply needed someone to help you see it. On a cold December evening, Ashford took her to his country estate. A sprawling manor house in Surrey that had been in his family for generations. He showed her through rooms filled with treasures from across centuries, paintings by masters long dead, furniture from dynasties that had crumbled to dust, books that were the last surviving copies of lost works. This is my true home, he said, as they stood in his library, surrounded by floor-to-ceiling shelves of leather-bound volumes. London is where I perform the role of nobleman, but here I can be myself. I can study, read, remember. I can exist without pretense. It is beautiful, Eloise breathed, turning slowly to take it all in. It is like standing inside history itself. It is lonely, Ashford said quietly. I have lived here alone for decades, with only servants who know enough to ask no questions. I have walked these halls for countless nights, reading books I have read a dozen times before, playing chess against myself, waiting for something to change. And then you appeared. And suddenly this house feels like it could be a home again. Eloise turned to face him, seeing the vulnerability in his expression. Ashford, marry me, he said, the words tumbling out as though they had been held back too long. I know it is soon. I know you should have more time. But I have waited 3 centuries for you, Eloise. I cannot bear to wait any longer. Marry me. Share this life with me. Let me spend eternity trying to deserve you. Her throat closed. She had known this moment was coming, had felt it building between them like a gathering storm. Yet now that it had arrived, she felt the full weight of the choice before her. I would be mortal, she said slowly. I would age while you remained unchanged. I would die while you lived on. Yes, he said, and his voice broke. That is the cruelty of it. I offer you my heart, my devotion, everything I am, and in return, you would have only a handful of decades before death claimed you. It is the most selfish proposal in history. I am asking you to love a monster who will watch you die. Or, Eloise said carefully, I could become like you. The words landed like stones between them. Ashford went very still, his expression unreadable. No, he said finally. I will not do that to you. I will not curse you with this existence. What if it is not a curse? Eloise stepped closer, her heart racing. What if it is a gettis? You have shown me what immortality can mean. Centuries of learning, of helping others, of accumulating wisdom and using it for good. You have shown me a community of beings who have chosen honor over monstrosity. Why should I not join you in that? Because you would lose everything, Ashford said desperately. The warmth of sunlight, the taste of food, the possibility of children. You would be cut off from your family, forced to watch them age and die. You would become something other than human, and you can never undo that choice. I would gain everything, Eloise countered. I would gain you, and time, and the possibility of making a real difference in the world. I could study, learn, help people across generations. I could be your partner in truth, not just for a few brief years, but for centuries. I could love you without the shadow of my mortality hanging over us both. Eloise, I have thought about this, she interrupted. I have thought about little else since you revealed what you are. I am not speaking from impulse or ignorance. I am choosing this with full knowledge of what it means. I am choosing you, Ashford. I am choosing us. I am choosing a life of purpose and meaning and love that transcends the ordinary bounds of human existence. Ashford's composure cracked. He pulled her into his arms, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. You are certain, truly certain, because once it is done, There is no going back. I am certain, she whispered against his chest. I have never been more certain of anything in my life. He pulled back just enough to look into her eyes, his own glistening with what might have been tears, if vampires could cry. Then yes, yes to everything. Yes to marriage, yes to transformation, yes to eternity together. You have made me the happiest creature in existence, mortal or otherwise. When? She asked. After the wedding, he said firmly. I will not transform you until we are bound by every law and custom. You will be my wife in the eyes of God and man before you become my companion in immortality. They were married on a cold January evening in the small church near Ashford's estate. Eloise's father attended, pleased if somewhat bewildered by his daughter's sudden elevation in status. Lady Marguerite and the other vampires came as well, along with a handful of mortal friends who knew only that Lord Blackwood was an eccentric nobleman with unusual habits. Eloise wore a gown of ivory silk that had belonged to Ashford's mortal mother, carefully preserved across the centuries. Ashford wore black, as always, but his eyes glowed with an inner light that made him look almost alive. I, Ashford Blackwood, take thee, Eloise Hartwell, to be my wedded wife, he said, his voice steady and sure. To have and to hold from this day forward, for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish till death do us part, and beyond death, into whatever eternity awaits us both. Eloise repeated her own vows with equal conviction, and when the vicar pronounced them man and wife, Ashford kissed her with a tenderness that made her forget they stood in a church full of witnesses. The transformation took place 3 nights later, in the privacy of Ashford's library. Lady Marguerite was there to guide them, her centuries of experience a steadying presence. It will hurt, she warned Eloise. The venom burns as it changes you, but Ashford will be with you every moment. You will not face this alone. I am ready, Eloise said, though her heart raced with a mixture of fear and anticipation. Ashford held her gently, his lips against her throat. I love you, he whispered. I will love you through this pain and beyond it, through all the centuries to come. I love you too, she breathed, now and always. The bite was sharp, then burning, then an agony that consumed her entire being. She felt her mortal life draining away, felt the venom spreading through her veins like liquid fire. Through it all, Ashford held her, murmuring words of love and comfort. His own blood offered to complete the transformation. When she woke 3 days later, the world had changed. Colours were sharper, sounds clearer, scents more complex. She could hear Ashford's breathing in the next room, could smell the leather of the books surrounding her, could feel the texture of the sheets against her skin with overwhelming intensity. Eloise? Ashford appeared in the doorway, his expression anxious. How do you feel? She sat up slowly, marveling at the strength in her limbs, the clarity of her thoughts. I feel alive, she said wonderingly, more alive than I ever felt as a mortal. He crossed to her in an instant, gathering her into his arms. You are beautiful, he breathed. You were always beautiful, but now you shine, Eloise. You are radiant, she laughed, the sound fuller and richer than her mortal laugh had been. And you are mine. For centuries to come, you are mine. For all eternity, he agreed. and kissed her with a passion that no longer needed to be restrained. 20 years later, they stood together in the same library, surrounded by new books and old memories. They had traveled the world, studied at universities under assumed names, helped establish hospitals and schools and libraries. They had saved lives, prevented injustices, used their immortal perspective to make the world incrementally better. "Do you regret it?" Ashford asked, as he sometimes still did. "The choice you made." Eloise turned from the window where she had been watching the sunset. One of the few things she missed about mortality, the ability to stand in full sunlight. But even that loss seemed small compared to what she had gained. "Never," she said firmly, "not for a single moment. You gave me the world, Ashford. You gave me time and purpose and love beyond measure. How could I regret that?" He pulled her close, and she rested her head against his chest, listening to the silence where a heartbeat should have been, a silence that matched her own. "I beat you at chess," she said softly, "and you kept your promise. You revealed your secret, and it changed everything." "You changed everything," he corrected. "You saw a monster and chose to love him anyway. You took a curse and transformed it into a blessing. You are the most extraordinary being I have known in 367 years of existence." "Then we are well matched," Eloise replied, tilting her face up to his. "Two extraordinary beings, loving each other through all the centuries to come." He kissed her then, soft and sweet and full of promise. And in that moment, Eloise knew that she had made the right choice. She had gambled everything on a chess game and a vampire's promise. And she had won a love that would outlast empires, a partnership that would endure through ages yet unborn, and a purpose that gave meaning to immortality itself. Outside, the last light faded from the sky and the stars emerged one by one, ancient, eternal, and beautiful, just like them.